In Canada, it's estimated that 21% of our population will meet the criteria for addiction in a lifetime, which is staggering. Furthermore, we see the number of drug overdoses in our major cities rising year over year, and we ask ourselves, what is going on? Well, my guests today have walked the very difficult journey of addiction in their own family and have a message of hope for all who feel like giving up. Bill Dyck is the lead pastor of Toronto Alliance Church, and Donna Dyck, his wife, is an author, blogger, and speaker, and they join us today to share their story. Welcome to Huntley Street, Donna and Bill.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
I have to say, this devotional, your latest offering, Donna and Bill, hit especially close to home, as you know, we have had a family member battling in the area of addiction and has walked this road for many, many years. Why was it important to create a resource like this?
I think the reason for Bill and I why we did is because as we walked through that very valley, there's just so few resources out there for those that are walking with a loved one. There's a lot of resources for the loved one, but not so much for the parents or for the family members that are walking alongside.
Yeah, but we meet so many people too, who are in a state of shock or numbness or just disoriented. What do we do? People who have in their own families some loved one that is addicted, and they are finding a tremendously difficult time finding solid footing.
Paint a little bit of a picture for us as to what you face as a family. And you refer so lovingly throughout this devotional, as it was one of your children that dealt with addiction, and you refer to them as the loved one. And I think that's beautiful. And I think it's even more beautiful that that very loved one wrote the foreword for this devotional. But paint a little bit of a picture as to what it was like.
Well, we went through, for us it was about an 8-year journey, I think. And it would be, he was a binge drinker, and so you would have a couple of good days, and then it would be several nightmare days. And then it just got worse. And that's the problem with most addictions. It's progressive. It gets worse and worse and worse. And while he may have only struggled with alcohol, it was horrific. And to the place where he finally wanted to take his life. He was so filled with despair and regret and caught in the cycle of addiction. It was awful.
As a parent, how do you respond to that? Because you can see your child spiraling, and you really, it's always our desire as parents to try and rescue our kids from themselves at times. And how does it make you feel as a parent when you realize they're going down a path that you just can't control and stop?
Yeah, for sure. It's hard. It is heartbreaking. You have such vision for that life. You've always, they always was a loved one, always will be a loved one.
Right.
You have such vision and hope, and this one just is on quite a different trajectory and doesn't have much hope at all. So you, for sure, you have to dig a lot deeper. You gotta find your strength in God.
Yeah.
Because there aren't, you're on unfamiliar ground here. You're on a path. It's not a journey that you wanted. You definitely weren't seeking it, and you're on it. You're on it, full on.
Right, whether you like it or not.
And so you begin, not that we didn't before, but on a whole another place, you begin crying out to God for perspective and for wisdom and insight and what to do.
Yeah. Now, Donna, having come from a home where you experienced addiction, as a child, did your experience give you any more or less grace for the situation you were facing with your son? Well,
my dad was an alcoholic, and my brother struggled with drug addiction, and both of them died young. And so it terrified me, to be honest with you. And the way our loved one was drinking, I just didn't know if he would live out his life. and I didn't want to have to live through that again. Maybe being so familiar with it, I don't know if it was honestly helpful or possibly. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was
Certainly gave you a level of understanding that perhaps others.
For sure, absolutely. Greater understanding. Yes, absolutely. But also not coming to the conclusion just because my dad's life ended the way it did, or my brother's life ended the way it did. As long as God is on the throne, it doesn't mean my loved one's life has to end the same.
Right.
And I had to remember that and fight to remember that at times.
Yeah. And I mean, we need to be clear that the addiction of one impacts the entire family.
Absolutely.
Talk to us a little bit about how that is true.
Well, it causes, you would understand this in your own family as well, but the level of despair that family members have, they watch mom and dad being brokenhearted over and over again, disappointed, terrified, and they're watching that and trying to love their loved one. They love that one no matter what. The brokenness and the anger, having to deal with that, the forgiveness, all of that. You walk through all of that.
Everyone's experiencing that on different levels and at different times. I want to read an excerpt from week 4, because you break this into 24 weeks, this devotional. And you cover some of the difficult conversations, but very crucial conversations, as you write in the opening remarks, that need to be had as families walking through addiction. And you write here, there came a time in our journey where we had to admit that providing room and board and everything else we were doing for our son was no longer helping him. Coming up with the courage to tell him we were not going to let him stay was one of the hardest conversations of our lives. And you go on to talk about the fear associated with that, perhaps losing. You know, how important is that tough love conversation when you're walking this road of addiction with someone that you love dearly? You would put yourself in their place if you could.
Yeah.
Very, very important. I remember that time really having almost to make a choice, because I could see particularly the negative effect it was having on my wife. And so, so where does your allegiance lie here? Because you have a loved one, you have a very beloved spouse. Yeah. And it's very difficult to wade through that. One of the things that we recognized early on is how important it was for Donna and I to stay on the same page and to pull together. And often these things can divide. Right? They can be very powerful forces because you have different approaches in such an intense crisis, and it's right in the middle of your home. And one can respond more compassion. Another might say, "I think we need to take a tougher stand here." And so, but it's just learning. We need to pull together and not let this, what is here, separate us. So, you got to have clear conversations. And that was a very difficult. Those conversations are always difficult, but even there, God helps us. He helps us. And that whole chapter is all about that, finding the courage. Well, that courage doesn't come from within. We find that courage again.
You have a source, outside source.
Yeah,
that's God. You talk about God speaking to you through this difficult season. What was that message? What carried you through?
Well, there were many different things the Lord, and that's what every chapter, every week is based on something that God either spoke to us or taught us at the bottom of that valley. And like for myself, one of the first weeks, it's called Worrying Prayer. And it was one of the times I was on the way to the hospital to visit our loved one because once again, he had tried to take his life, and I was praying. And any parent who knows what it is to have a child who is so unwell, and you're praying literally in circles, and you're praying like that. And then the Lord, he broke into my circle praying, and he said, "Donna, you are not praying, you are worrying in prayer form." And I had to stop and realize, Donna, you're not even laying him at the throne. You're just going like this. And so that was one of the things that the Lord, he stopped me in my tracks, because I I struggle with anxiety on the best of days, but in those times, it was really, really difficult. And that's one of the things the Lord spoke to me about.
Yeah. When we bring our loved one to the Lord, we have to leave them there.
Yes, you
And
do.
oftentimes we want to pick up that burden again when we're done praying.
Yeah.
Bill, what was the turning point? What was the turning point for your loved one? When God just moved in and they started making right decisions?
That's a good question. What was the turning point? I think it was a bit of a process.
Yeah. And that's often the case for many, right? It's not necessarily a snap of the finger.
Mm-hmm.
I think at the root of it is an encounter with God.
Yeah.
But it was a bit of a process. There was an attempt at a rehab. There was conversations about that. Always went south, but it is an encounter with God. The Lord gave us hope throughout that. We had many very dark days, seasons, weeks, but He gave us hope. This is going to, as you were just talking with Donna, He would speak to us, and this is just around the corner. This is just around the corner. He gave us hope. But what it was that actually triggered the thing, I'm not sure I could answer that. A few things from our point of view, but it was a process.
It was definitely, wouldn't you say it was part of, it came after we had asked him to leave, and he went and stayed with an uncle, and
Yes.
he had some very cold nights on a picnic table in the month of April, and I think that brought something forward in his mind, right?
That was significant.
That was very significant, and he went to one of our family and said, I'd like to go to a detox. And then he went from there right into rehab.
Yeah. Donna, you alluded to the fact that God spoke many messages to you throughout this season, this very difficult season, and experiencing the power of the presence of God in those moments, of intense worry and grief and despair, and yet God was there carrying you through, carrying your son through. And I know now, even to this day, you do ministry to people that are dealing with addiction and mental illness right downtown, Bill, at just outside probably the doors of the Toronto Alliance Church. But for right now in this last minute that we have together, either one of you, it doesn't matter. But just, someone's watching right now that's either an addict or a loved one of an addict. What would you say to them? They're feeling hopeless right now. What would you say to that person right now?
I would say all is not lost. I would say God is always at work. I would say press on in prayer, all kinds of prayer, listening prayer, crying out to God prayer. There's lamenting prayer. There's giving thanks. There's a praising prayer, but all kinds of prayer. But reach out to God. Jesus told his disciples they should always pray and not lose heart. God is at work. He loves us and he loves our loved ones. He is always at work. And, that presses us, all of us who are on an unwanted journey.
Yeah. I want to thank you both for being with us today and being so vulnerable about your journey and for creating this beautiful resource. So important. There aren't a lot of resources for family members of those facing addiction. We just want our viewers to know, too, that God is a God of hope. And we thank you for both continuing to share your story and the work that you do. And we know the difference that Jesus can make. The book is called Hope for an Unwanted Journey. Daily readings for those whose loved ones have struggled with illness, addiction and mental illness, such a valuable resource. We want to encourage you to get your copy. And if you're watching right now and you heard something Bill said or Donna said about addiction or the power of the presence of God in your life, and you want to make a difference, you want to experience that change in your life, we want you to know that there is hope. There's hope that's found in Christ Jesus. And there's no better place to start than picking up the phone and calling our prayer lines. We would love to pray with you. We are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It doesn't matter when you are watching this program. We will pick up the phone. The number is 1-866-273-4444. You can send us an email at prayer@crossroads.ca. But I would encourage you to pick up the phone and listen to that loving voice on the other end of the line. And God will meet you where you're at. Bill, Donna, thank you so much for being with us. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.